Konflikte können gerade derzeit zu großen Problemen führen und insbesondere dann, wenn Leute sagen, gibt es da eigentlich Erfahrung, wenn wir uns jetzt eventuell im beruflichen Umfeld streiten, wie wir außerhalb der klassischen Lösung, wir schicken den Anwalt voraus, bekommen Anwaltspost zurück und dann geht es hin und her über Tage, Wochen, Monate oder sogar Jahre mit einem meist anschließend völlig zerrütteten Verhältnis zu Partnern, Lieferanten, Mitarbeitenden. Gibt es da andere Möglichkeiten und die gibt es in der Tat. Wir haben Jane Gunn heute bei uns und Jane Gunn selber war langjährig Anwältin innerhalb eines großen Konzernes und hat dann einen anderen Lösungsweg eingeschlagen, der nichtsdestoweniger vollkommen juristisch bindend ist, allerdings deutlich effizienter, deutlich effektiver und kostensparender. Neben ihrem Wissen, was sie jetzt mit uns hier teilen wird, bietet sie zudem einen Zugang zu ihrer Videoserie kostenlos an am Ende des Interviews und zudem auch noch einen Vorschlag bzw. einen Schriftsatz, den man sich am Ende von ihr per E-Mail direkt anfordern kann. Ich wünsche viel Erfolg beim Zuhören. Das Interview wurde in englischer Sprache geführt. Some of you might find the times at the moment quite challenging, and we received quite a number of emails where people said they'd like to have an expert on exactly this topic. Well, her tagline reads, helping people to manage, change, challenge, and crisis. Hello and welcome international mediator, author, and keynote speaker, Jane Gunn. Hello, Jane.
Hello, Niels. Hi.
So is it correct, you are a former corporate lawyer?
Yes, way back now, but I was a corporate lawyer in London for some years, yes.
So at the moment, when I understand your approach correctly, you say that mediation is the better way how to resolve conflict. Maybe I have the wrong impression, but isn't the whole business of being a lawyer exactly the opposite and basically saying we do the official paperwork first before we do anything else?
Yes, and that's the world that I left 25 years ago, Niels, because I saw the light, I saw a difference. And in fact, that was in the very early days of mediation. And since then, it's really blossomed, if you like. It's become the sort of go-to dispute resolution process. And in fact, even more so since this current crisis.
So I'll just give you an example, because, of course, we prepared for this whole podcast. And we had an example where people said, crisis began, COVID-19. And then, of course, we had a couple of people who didn't pay our bills. So we started to send lawyer letters. As a response, we got other lawyer letters back, which we expected. Then it went back and forth. And suddenly we realized that not only we didn't get our bills paid, but suddenly the invoices from the lawyers came in, which we couldn't pay because we didn't get paid. And the situation became a lot worse. On the other hand, they say, if we should avoid lawyers, how do we get our invoices paid? What would you tell them how to approach this situation?
So the approach that I take for my clients or people that come to me for advice is always approach the person that you're in a conflict or dispute with directly first to see if there's a straightforward negotiation that you can have between you. So what tends to happen in many businesses is that we escalate the conflict very quickly. So we either go externally to a lawyer, or if we're internal, we escalate it up the chain of command. We go to somebody more senior in our team.
Yes.
And that's our instinctive way, get somebody else to help me and they'll tell me what to do. But the first step for anybody in any conflict should be, can I solve this myself? Can I actually pick up the phone to the other person and just say, what's going on here? And in many cases today, obviously there's a cash flow problem. Well, perhaps we can solve that really quickly by actually explaining to each other where we're coming from. So that's step number one, is have a face-to-face conversation. So
yes.
I was going to say, so step number two, if that doesn't work, if you really meet, you can't get through or you meet a deadlock there, would be to say, look, we're obviously going to have to go to our lawyer, but would you agree to having some kind of negotiation meeting or even a mediation, so involving a third party like myself? So trying to anticipate the potential legal fees and say, let's agree to avoid that. Neither of us want that outcome, do we? Why don't we agree? Perhaps we need someone to help us manage this meeting because we both feel it's going to be a difficult meeting. How about we have some kind of negotiation or mediation to help us through this?
So when people now say we should go for mediation? Often people told me many people, especially in the court world, were fearing to admit that there is a cash flow problem because they said, when we say we have a cash flow problem, people could think that we're in a weak position and just wait until our business might go upside down so they don't have to pay anything at all. How can I communicate that my position is not great without running the risk that I lose the negotiation before we started?
So the whole point of mediation, as opposed, in fact, to face-to-face negotiation, is you've got this mediator, this third person in the middle. So each person can speak confidentially to the mediator and tell them their story, their worst-case scenario, all of those things in complete confidence. And the mediator can work out, the combination of those two stories and try and help people to work out the way through. Very often they're in a room together, but often they're not. And actually, we're doing all our mediations on Zoom at the moment. But, you can manage it in a way where you can have face-to-face meetings. Everybody can be in one room. But you can also have these confidential meetings where each party can tell the mediator what the backstory is. And they can say, oh, I see. And that has two positive outcomes. It helps people to actually tell someone their story, which they've been quite burdened with at the moment, and they're trying to work. So it can be, someone else to sort of brainstorm with, if you like, can be the mediator. And it also enables the mediator to see and then do what we call reality testing with the client. So given what you've told me, what would be your best case outcome and what would be your worst case outcome, and then you can move on to what we call the negotiation phase of the mediation. Once you've done all that kind of unpacking of the backstory and the best and worst case scenarios and what are some of the options. So there's quite a formal process that we go through to move through this mediation process before we start the negotiation, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Just a question off the record. Doesn't it make you quite unpopular when you were a fully qualified lawyer and suddenly not only you leave this industry, but you also tell people not to use lawyers anymore? Isn't that what they might, let's say, not consider as too much of a great idea?
So let me tell you, Niels, mediation is sometimes referred to as part of ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, but ADR for lawyers often stands for Alarming Drop in Revenue. And yes, we have had some resistance in some countries. I mean, I think in Italy, for example, they had huge resistance from the lawyers. But actually now, many lawyers have come round to the idea that if their clients can use mediation, they can, they can resolve their conflicts in better ways, and perhaps they should be collaborating with us rather than trying to block our process.
Yes. Another question which we got was when people say, when we go to mediation, do we get a solution which is legally binding at the end, or can the other party just drop out of the idea we had at the end and agreed on just by saying, no, I think I'm not sticking to this?
Yeah, very good question, Neil. So what happens in the mediation is everything is confidential and what we call without prejudice. So it doesn't prejudice any legal proceedings that have either started or might start until a formal agreement has been made. And what we then do is that is actually written up, often by lawyers, but it's written up and then signed by the parties. And that then does become a legally binding contract. If court proceedings have already started, it can be registered with the court and the court proceedings are stopped. But it does take the form of a legally binding contract. It's not an order of the court, but it is a legally binding contract.
Excellent. Of course, now we come to the part which, from what I considered quite fascinating. When I talk to people, they said, yes, we have legal problems and we have business challenges, but many said that the personal side for them is a lot more challenging. So people say they have a feeling of insecurity, they see change coming, which triggers them with a lot of uncertainty. And they, of course, realize there is a crisis which might lead to different challenges. What would you say, because that's another part of your expertise, how can people face these situations, especially when they might have, let's say, a mortgage to pay, a family to feed, bills to pay, and they suddenly think, what happens when next month my job doesn't exist anymore?
Well, all of these things are conflicts, if you like. I mean, all of us have internal conflicts, which come from various places, and we have external conflicts. And very often, as you're really alluding to, our internal conflicts feed our external conflicts. And that's the thing we sometimes need to explore. So I guess, again, in mediation, that's one of the things I do, is to help people explore, where does this conflict come from and how can I personally manage that? And it's one of the things I've written about too, Niels, is really this overlap, if you like, which we're seeing really a lot at the moment between conflicts at work and conflicts at home. There is a huge overlap always between those, but there is more than ever now an overlap between the conflicts that go on at home and at work. And if you have a conflict at work, it's going to impact on your home life. And if you have a conflict at home, it's going to impact on your work life. And so the principles that apply to conflict resolution can help in both cases.
So, I think already answered the next question I would have had. Some people wondered, do conflicts at home create conflicts in my workplace? Is this connected?
Very much connected. It is, because, if you think about, one of the things we look at is what is the impact of conflict, and it can have a financial impact, sure, if you're going to have to pay an expert or lawyers, but it also has an impact on your health, on your ability to focus on your work, on relationships, and all of those things are costs. They're demotivators. They take your attention away from your work, or from home. If you're very worried about a conflict that's going on with your business partner, and you go home and you don't focus on your family, that's another conflict that's been triggered by work. So those two things really do bounce off each other all the time.
Yes. Is that something you write about in your book with the excellent title, How to Beat Bedlam in the Boardroom and Boredom in the Bedroom? Is that something you write about there?
I write about that. So yes, you're right, Niels, and thank you for mentioning the book. In that book, every chapter has got a story from home and from work, and often those two are connected, and then they're all based on real life scenarios and stories that I've seen. So exactly that.
Excellent. One final question to wrap the whole interview up. We received quite a number of people who said, I like the idea of mediation, but there is one problem. The people who are on board level in our business, they have the same business club in common with certain lawyers. They are best buddies, best friends. They go on golf tours together. They hang out together. They simply struggle to take this business away from these lawyers because they think they are going to lose a part of their network. How can I overcome the challenge to convince people who are more senior in the business and have more say in the business I have to work in? How can I convince them to go for mediation instead of the usual legal procedures?
I look at three things, I suppose, and what's really key for businesses at the moment is how much is this going to cost. So one of the things that you have better in choosing mediation is cost, what I call cost control and cycle time. You reduce your costs, you retain control of the outcome, and your cycle time, the amount of time between the beginning of this conflict and the end of it, is so much shorter. And so there's a real business case for mediation, Niels.
Excellent. Of course, if people now have additional aspects with which they want to talk with you about, I'm going to put your contact data in the show notes of this podcast. And now, to wrap the whole interview up, there's only one thing I have left to say. Jane, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Niels, for inviting me. And I just say to people, think about mediation first.
Excellent final words. And for anyone who likes to know more about this topic, Jane offers us her 10 free videos and the blueprint for managing conflict. Just drop her an email. You find her email address in the show notes of this podcast, or just email directly to jane@janegunn.co.uk.